Have you ever imagined that the most dangerous trap for your soul might not be outside, but hidden inside the Catholic Church itself? Padre Pio, the saint of confessions and tears, once warned that a terrifying spiritual trap was deceiving even the most devout believers. This is not about heretics, false religions, or enemies of faith. According to Padre Pio, the real danger is a shadow growing inside the walls of the church. Pride disguised as holiness. He saw with his own eyes how many Catholics pray, attend Mass, and receive communion faithfully, but deep in their hearts carry arrogance, contempt, and judgment against others. In his prophetic tears, Padre Pio said that this purity without love was more destructive than the sins of those who live in ignorance. He warned that the devil was not only outside, but also hidden among the good, using spiritual pride to blind souls and block the grace of God. This is the Catholic warning we must face today. Are you really living in humility and love, or could you also be falling into the trap Padre Pio revealed? Stay with me until the end of this video, because we are going to uncover the signs of this trap, how it destroys even the most faithful hearts, and the way Padre Pio taught us to escape it. Before we begin, comment below. What prayer does your soul need today? Your participation brings light to this community and strengthens many other souls who are fighting the same invisible battles. When Padre Pio walked through the cloisters of San Giovanni Rotondo, many thought his greatest concern was with the sins of the world outside. But in reality, he carried a heavier burden in his heart, the shadow of a spiritual trap rising inside the church itself. Those who lived close to him recall moments in confession when Padre Pio would tremble, not because of the sins of unbelievers, but because of the hidden pride of those who claimed to be closest to God. He saw tears of people who confessed the same mistakes again and again, yet he also saw another kind of danger, the soul that no longer admitted faults, convinced of its own purity. Padre Pio warned that this hidden arrogance was a poison spreading among the faithful. He explained that the devil did not always need to lead souls into scandalous sins. Instead, he could disguise himself inside the church, whispering into the hearts of the devout, "You are better than the others, your prayers are holier, your devotion is greater." And in that lie, humility dies, charity fades, and grace is blocked. This, Padre Pio said, was the real battlefield, not the streets of the world, but the silent pews of the church. Imagine being there in the confessional when Padre Pio's eyes filled with tears. He saw how even those who prayed the rosary daily and received communion every Sunday could fall into this deadly trap. The exterior appeared holy, but inside the heart, a wall of pride was being built. And what terrified him most was that these souls believed themselves safe, while in reality they were blind to the danger growing within. Padre Pio often repeated that the most dangerous battles are not fought in the open, but in silence, inside the heart. He explained that the devil does not always come with horns and fire. More often, he comes dressed in devotion, carrying a Bible, whispering prayers, and hiding behind appearances of holiness. This is why Padre Pio called the spiritual trap inside the church the most subtle of all dangers. It makes people believe they are advancing in holiness, when in reality they are walking away from God. He noticed it during Mass, when some would receive communion with a cold heart, convinced that the act itself was enough for salvation. He saw it in those who judged their neighbors harshly, even while praying with lips that seemed holy. Padre Pio knew that this false purity was destroying souls faster than open sin, because at least the sinner recognizes his need for forgiveness, while the proud believer thinks he is already safe. This was why Padre Pio often cried during prayer. His tears were not only for those who rejected God completely, but also for those inside the church who were blind to their own arrogance. He said the devil celebrates more when a proud soul kneels in a pew than when an ignorant sinner walks away from the altar. For him, the greatest blindness was not outside, but among those who thought themselves closest to God. Padre Pio's words are still alive today, reminding us that our biggest danger may not be the world's temptations, but the pride that hides inside our own faith practices. One of Padre Pio's most striking warnings was that spiritual pride makes a person stop growing. The humble believer always feels in need of mercy, always seeks confession, and always asks for God's help. But the proud believer thinks he has already arrived, that he no longer needs to change, that his way of praying is superior. This is the trap that turns devotion into a cage, a kind of spiritual blindness that blocks every grace. Padre Pio explained that this illusion gives the devil an open door. The enemy no longer needs to tempt with sin, because he has already placed chains inside the soul through vanity disguised as holiness. The rosary prayed with pride loses its power, the communion received without love becomes empty, and the Mass attended without humility becomes just another ritual. Padre Pio wept because he saw this happening in front of him. People who looked holy but were being deceived. People who thought they were closer to God but were drifting further away. This is a message that touches each of us today. Are we truly humble before God, or are we secretly trusting in our own goodness? Padre Pio's tears are a reminder that salvation is not about appearances, but about love, humility, and surrender. And if this message is reaching your heart, let me invite you to strengthen this mission together. Give a like to this video and subscribe to the channel so this warning of Padre Pio can reach more souls who need to hear it. Each gesture of support helps spread this light and makes these spiritual messages go further, touching lives that may be trapped in silence. Padre Pio once told his spiritual children that the Church would always remain holy, because Christ himself founded it. But he also said that within its walls there would always be weeds growing alongside the wheat. For him, the most painful part was not the weakness of sinners outside, but the hidden arrogance of those who wore masks of piety. He reminded everyone that Judas did not betray Jesus from the outside. He was one of the 12, sitting at the same table, sharing the same bread. In the same way, the devil still seeks to enter not through distant enemies, but through the very hearts of those who look closest to the altar. This is the spiritual trap inside the Church, when the faithful believe that by attending Mass, praying the Rosary, or receiving communion, they are automatically saved. Padre Pio insisted that without humility and love, these practices lose their strength. The trap works by transforming sacred devotion into pride, by making people think that holiness is a medal to be shown instead of a cross to be carried. He cried because he saw families destroyed by this false sense of superiority, parishes divided, and souls who believed they were secure yet were far from God. The enemy, he warned, does not need to fight openly when pride already lives in the heart of the faithful. And that is why his warning still shakes us today. Salvation is not about appearing holy, but about living in constant repentance and mercy. In his letters, Padre Pio described how many devout people had fallen into a dangerous illusion. They counted their prayers like trophies, compared their sacrifices as if they were competitions, and looked down on others who were weaker. For him, this was the most effective work of the devil, transforming acts of faith into weapons of judgment. He said that a proud rosary was more harmful than no rosary at all, because it deceived the soul into believing it was already holy. Padre Pio warned his confessors that pride was capable of turning even fasting and penance into sins. He said that the humble person could fall 1,000 times but always rise again through confession, while the proud person would fall once and never rise, because he refused to admit his weakness. This was the trap that terrified him most. Souls walking in the Church with their heads held high, while in heaven they were seen as blind. He asked the faithful to always examine their hearts. Do you pray out of love or to feel better than others? Do you attend Mass with humility or to be noticed? These are questions that strike us today just as strongly as in his time. And now, I want to invite you to engage with this message. Write in the comments, "Lord, don't let me fall into pride." Your words can be a public act of humility, a way of saying to heaven and to this community, "I want to walk in truth." By commenting, you not only open your heart, but also inspire others to do the same. Padre Pio often reminded his spiritual children that the devil prefers to corrupt what is most sacred. He said that temptations against the flesh or against money were obvious, and sooner or later the sinner could recognize them. But when pride and arrogance enter the soul through prayer itself, they remain invisible. This is why he considered spiritual pride the most dangerous of all traps. It makes a person believe he is pleasing God, while in truth he is closing the doors of grace. He once explained that true holiness is always hidden and humble. The saints, although admired, never saw themselves as superior. They wept over their sins and lived with a constant sense of unworthiness before God. Padre Pio himself, despite bearing the stigmata and performing countless miracles, never stopped calling himself a poor friar who prays. Yet he saw many around him who prayed not with love but with vanity, seeking recognition for their piety. This broke his heart, because it meant that even within the church, the enemy was winning battles in silence. He taught that humility was the key to protecting the soul. Without humility, every prayer becomes noise. With humility, even the simplest sigh becomes a powerful cry before heaven. The trap was clear: transforming devotion into pride, turning the altar into a mirror, making people love their own holiness more than they loved God. The witnesses who lived with Padre Pio often recalled his tears during prayer. They were not theatrical displays, but genuine grief over what he saw happening in the spiritual life of many believers. He said the church was full of people who knew the formulas of faith, but lacked the fire of love. For him, it was tragic to see rosaries prayed without humility, confessions made without true repentance, and masses attended without reverence. Padre Pio warned that when the external act replaces the inner surrender, the soul begins to suffocate. This suffocation is subtle. It does not cause immediate scandal, but little by little it hardens the heart. The faithful continue to appear devout, but inside they are drifting farther from God. He explained that the worst part of this blindness is the false security it provides. A soul that thinks it is already holy no longer seeks conversion, no longer asks for help, no longer feels the need for mercy. He insisted that the devil prefers to use this strategy more than open sin because it kills slowly and silently. That is why he cried, not only for the lost souls outside, but for those inside the church who thought themselves safe. His message was not to frighten, but to awaken. He wanted every believer to recognize that salvation is not in appearances, but in humility and constant surrender. Padre Pio explained that one of the clearest signs of this spiritual trap inside the church was the absence of compassion. He said that when a person prays often, receives the sacraments, and yet treats others with harshness, judgment, or coldness, that soul has already fallen. For him, authentic holiness always produces mercy, while false holiness always produces division. This is why he warned that the devil laughs when a devout person despises another for being less spiritual. He observed that many of the faithful compared their devotions, criticized the way others prayed, or condemned small faults in neighbors while ignoring the pride inside their own hearts. Padre Pio said that this was the exact moment when the trap had closed, because instead of drawing closer to God, the person was imitating the Pharisee who stood in the temple saying, "I am not like the others." To protect against this, Padre Pio urged believers to constantly examine themselves and ask, do my prayers make me love more or judge more? That simple question, he said, could expose the illusion of false holiness. And now, I want to invite you to take a step of humility. Write in the comments, "Lord, free me from false holiness." This act of confessing publicly, even in just a few words, can help your soul stay awake and resist the trap that Padre Pio warned us about. When you comment, you not only affirm your faith, but also encourage others who are struggling with the same battle. Padre Pio never minimized the power of prayer, the rosary, or the sacraments. On the contrary, he called them weapons of heaven. But he always insisted that without humility, these weapons could turn against the soul itself. He explained that pride contaminates even the holiest practices, the same way a drop of poison can corrupt a whole chalice of wine. For him, this was the gravest warning. The devil does not need to remove the rosary from your hand. He only needs to change the intention of your heart. He gave countless examples of people who prayed daily, but remained angry, bitter, or unforgiving. He said that these souls were deceived because they confused activity with sanctity. The rosary was repeated but not lived. The Mass was attended but not absorbed. The confession was made but without sincere repentance. And all of this created a false peace, a calm surface covering a soul that was slowly dying inside. Padre Pio begged his children to remember that true devotion is measured not by how many prayers are said, but by how much love is practiced. The sign of grace is always charity, forgiving enemies, helping the poor, bearing with patience the faults of others. He said that the devil flees from humility, but clings to pride disguised as devotion. That is why he wept, because the Church, while holy, was full of believers who thought they were safe while living in this blindness. Padre Pio often described humility as the key that unlocks all the treasures of heaven. He said that the saints were not people who never sinned, but people who never stopped admitting their weakness before God. This humility kept them safe from the spiritual trap that he saw growing inside the Church. For him, it was not the number of prayers that defined holiness, but the way those prayers transformed the heart. He explained that when prayer produces love, forgiveness, and compassion, then it is genuine. But when prayer produces pride, coldness, or judgment, then it becomes empty, no matter how devout it may look. Padre Pio used to say that the devil does not fear many prayers. He fears humble prayers. He does not fear crowded churches. He fears hearts that are sincere before God. And that is why he warned with such tears and urgency. Without humility, even devotion can become a weapon against the soul. This was not a message meant to discourage, but to awaken. He wanted every believer to remember that holiness is not about appearances, but about truth before God. He reminded his children that Christ himself washed the feet of his disciples, showing that true greatness is always expressed in humility. In that gesture, Padre Pio saw the cure for all spiritual pride. If Jesus humbled himself, how could his followers walk with arrogance? Today, we uncovered one of Padre Pio's most painful warnings. The greatest danger is not outside, but hidden inside the Church itself. The trap of pride, disguised as holiness, blinds even the most devout, turning prayers into empty words and communion into cold rituals. His tears remind us that the devil celebrates more when a proud soul kneels in a pew than when a sinner walks away from the altar. But Padre Pio did not leave us in despair. He showed us the way out: humility, confession, sincere love, and prayer made with the heart. This is the shield against the trap, the light that opens heaven's doors and restores the soul to true grace. Every time we bow before God with humility, the chains of pride are broken. If this message touched you, leave a comment right now. Padre Pio, guide my soul. This will be your act of humility before heaven and a sign that you are awake to this warning. And if you want to walk this journey of faith with us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. These simple gestures help the message of Padre Pio reach thousands of souls who may be falling into the same trap without even realizing it. Don't stop here. Continue with me in the next video, where another powerful message of Padre Pio awaits you. Just click and let your heart keep discovering the hidden warnings that can save your soul. Because this is not just the end of a video. It is the beginning of a deeper awakening, one step closer to God, guided by the tears and wisdom of Padre Pio. God bless you.